Yes, the vast majority of these nearly 21 million men, women and children in forced labor are exploited in the private economy, either by unscrupulous employers, enterprises or private individuals, criminals. The remainder are exploited by state authorities in prisons, rebel army groups. Now, when you look at the 19 million of victims in the private economy, we also know that the vast majority of those are exploited for their labor in a variety of sectors, and about 4.5 million are exploited in prostitution in the sex industry. We also know that the breakdown between adults and children, we estimate that 5.5 million children are in forced labor. That's around a quarter of the total. And we also see that women and girls are slightly more at risk than men, 55% as opposed to 45% men and boys. We do see a clear link between labor mobility, which in itself is not a bad thing, of course, and forced labor. But we do see movement as a factor of vulnerability, at least for some persons, not for all. We see a clear link between cross-border migration and forced sexual exploitation. The vast majority of those who've crossed international borders end up in sexual exploitation. We also see that almost half of the total number of victims have moved, either internally or across borders. The majority of those who have moved internally end up in various forms of forced labor exploitation. Unfortunately, we cannot say with certainty. First of all, the two numbers, 2005-2009, cannot be compared because we have used a different methodology, a much more refined methodological model. We also observed a significant increase in the number of reports in the public domain, which may be due to the fact that there's an increased awareness and a better understanding of what forced labor is. But it could also be related to a real increase in the number of victims. And unfortunately, we cannot discern trends from these numbers. Well, in terms of absolute numbers, Asia and Pacific is in the first place. We have more than 11.7 million victims in this region, followed then by Africa, Latin America, and the other regions are then the countries of Southeastern Europe, including the Commonwealth of Independent States, developed economies, including the European Union, and the Middle East. However, you also have to look at the prevalence, which means the number of victims per 1,000 inhabitants, because this tells you something about the risk people face in different regions. And according to our prevalence figures, Asia is actually more in the middle, and the region leading is Southeastern Europe, including countries of the Commonwealth of Independent States. We also know, because we cannot measure trends over time, we cannot really say whether numbers have decreased or increased in a particular region. However, we do see a change in figures. For instance, in Africa, figures have increased significantly as compared to 2005, and we really think that's because it reflects it's a better picture of the reality. In 2005, we simply had very few reports from Africa. The same is true for the Middle East, which we now think reflects the better picture of reality.